Drum and bass is all about the bass. Thick, gritty, clean, dirty, and everything in between. And today we are diving deep into 5 essential bass sounds that every producer needs to know in order to master the low end of D&B. Whether you're into liquid, neuro, or jump up, this one is for you. Let's kick things off with a classic. It is the Reese Bass. The Reese is that dirty, deep, wide sound that you've probably heard in everything from old school jungle to modern rollers. It's made by layering detuned saw waves, running them through filters, adding distortion and a touch of chorus. And now I'm going to get my headphones because we are going to have a listen. The Reese is perfect for filling up the stereo field and adding that rolling groove. Okay, so let's design our very own Reese bass. Go to oscillator A and set it to either analog BD sine or saw round, and then go to the voices, and we're going to be setting this to between 2 and 3 and detune it to 0.1 to 0.2 and blend it around 75%. Now you can leave this as it is, and that would be a perfectly fine Reese bass, or you could layer it with another oscillator. And we're going to do that. We're going to enable oscillator B, and we're going to either pick the same or a slightly different wave. I'm going to go for a slightly different wave so that it occupies a slightly different space in the kind of stereo image. When we detune these waves, they're going to be phasing and spreading out across the stereo field. And if we have a different wave, it avoids any conflict. And to further avoid conflict, I'm going to detune this to just 2. So instead of 3, it's now going to be 2. And then come over to the sub oscillator and turn that on to add some low end reinforcement. So we have our detuned saw waves. Now we need to send them through the filter. So come over to the filter section, either select MG low 12 or low 24 and route all of the oscillators through it. So I'm going to come down to LFO 1 and drag that up to the filter cutoff, and then also select so that it's unidirectional. And then come back down to the rate in the LFO and set that to a desired taste. So I'm going to set this to 1 bar. So now we've got detuned saw waves, we've got them going into the filter, we need to add our distortion and chorus. So come into the effects tab and add in your distortion. I'm going to leave this on tube distortion and then add in the chorus. And then for some extra touches, you can come into Ableton and add a saturator and some OTT. Just be careful not to go OTT with the OTT. So the pro tip with the Reese Bass is to automate the filter cutoff, and you can add movement with LFOs and envelopes. Just a reminder that everything I'm demoing in this video will be available as a free preset to download, and that is in the description below. So these 5 bass sounds will be available for you to download if you don't want to build them yourself and you just want to get on with making music. Next up is the sub bass, the foundation of every drum and bass track. You got to keep it clean and you got to keep it pure. Literally a solid sine or low pass square is all you're going to need to translate a clean, punchy low end in clubs and on big systems. All right, so we're going to open up Serum, go to oscillator A, go to basic shapes and set it to a sine wave in position 1. Then enable the sub oscillator with a sine wave. Then go over to the filter, MG low 12. This is optional if you want to curve off any rogue upper frequencies. No effects. No effects. Keep this clean. You can add light distortion if you want to, but the cleaner this is, the more punchier it's going to be. Come down to the voicing tab, hit mono for ensuring that this is a mono synth, legato for that smooth glide, and portamento, setting it at 40 milliseconds so that if you do have notes that are next to each other, they will glide across each other. In Ableton, if you want to do some cleaning up and ensuring that this bass isn't congesting or competing with anything else in your project, then you can add in an EQ8, do a low pass filter, and then if you want to cut the very low end off around 30 hertz, you can do. That is just wind. Humans can't really hear that, but it is energy that could conflict with the rest of your project. Then have a utility and mono that everything below 120. Now, you may have heard of sidechain compression, and this is usually absolutely essential on your sub bass and your kick, and I will somewhere on this channel have a video about sidechain compression. So if you don't know what that is, it is linked above there, and it is essential for your sub bass and your kick relationship. Let's talk growl bass. This is perfect for neurofunk, tech step, and the harder styles of D&B, but depending on how you shape it with your filter, you can use it everywhere. It's about aggressive harmonics and wavetable movement using FM synthesis, frequency modulation. And I won't be going into it in this video, but I highly recommend that you resample your growl bass so that you can add in distortion and get closer to that vocal-like sound. In Serum, go to oscillator A, come in the drop-down menu and either select Monster 9 or this one, I Can Has Kick, and enable FM from B. Oscillator B, go to basic shapes, pitch this down 1 to 2 octaves, and now we have oscillator B, which is frequency modulating oscillator A. Come to the filter and we're going to go for band pass. So this cuts off the lower and upper frequencies, band pass 12 or 24, and modulate this with LFO 1. You could also add some modulation from LFO1 to the frequency modulation from B on oscillator A. Just be careful not to go too much on this because it can get very, very gnarly. I'm going to also adjust the wavetable position on this because I want to get a few of those frequencies coming through from the wave on oscillator A. Then come over into the effects tab, add distortion, either tube or diode. And then the option is to add a phaser or flanger for that kind of vocal vowel shaping. And again, we're going to go to the voicing tab, hit mono, legato on, and this time the portamento is going to be a little bit higher than the sub bass, which is between around 80 and 120 milliseconds. And then in Ableton, we can use corpus or frequency shifter, but we're going to use corpus, and that's going to give us that kind of whistling vocal sound. And you could also EQ and add saturator to enhance the mid harmonics. The essential part of this bass to keep in mind is to use the band pass filters, modulate with LFOs, and that's going to give you that vowel-like growl. All right, over to the 808 glide bass. Now, this one comes from hip hop, and it is basically a sine wave with a bit of a pitched down thump at the beginning, and it's very common in a lot of old school 90s music. And it's still used a lot today as it is a signature sound in hip hop and in D&B. Once again, all of these sounds are available for you to download for free, and I have created 5 presets of the 5 essential bass sounds that you need to know in order to produce drum and bass. let's get into designing the 808 itself. Open up Serum and go to Oscillator A. We're going to go to Basic Shapes. You can see a theme here. Basic Shapes, Sine Wave, position 1. Enable Sub Oscillator and set the pitch to 0. We're going to go to the Voicing tab and enable Mono, Legato on, Portamento between like 80 and 200 milliseconds. This is just to get that glide between notes if you're going to be putting them next to each other. Then over in the Effects tab, we're going to be adding some light distortion. Do that to the upper frequencies, so switch the EQ over. And we're going to be distorting the mid and upper frequencies. And then also do a slight boost on an EQ at around 80 to 100 hertz. And then the key thing is to shape this bass in your envelopes tab. So the main envelope 1, is shaping the overall sound of the bass. So we're going to change that shape so that it's a bit more of a rounded feeling, increase the release a little bit so that we do have some tailing off at the end and it doesn't just abruptly stop. And then, crucially, to get that kind of thump punch, it's a very quick pitch drop. We're going to create like kind of punchy spike shape on envelope 2. We're getting quite a fast attack. Crucially, we need to be taking the sustain all the way to the left, as this is going to be a very quick pitch drop on the beginning of the sound, and we want it to go back to the relative pitch to the MIDI note that's being played. So now that we have this kind of spike shape, we can drag this up to the coarse pitch and adjust either on Oscillator A or in the matrix. You can fine tune in there as well. Fine tune on the coarse pitch and set it to taste, and then we're going to get this very quick punch, which is a pitch drop at the beginning of our 808 sound, and that is a common characteristic of an 808. And of course, we cannot be forgetting the Wobble Bass. This is the 5th and final bass that we're going to be looking at, and it's been made famous in early jump up and dubstep. The Wobble Bass uses LFOs on a low pass filter to create that rhythmic wobble. Perfect for classic skank vibes or high energy drops. Okay, let's do the Wobble Bass. So we're going to come to Serum, go to Oscillator A, go to Basic Shapes, this time a saw or a square wave. And we're going to set the filter to low pass 12 and do a low cutoff at around 100 to 200 hertz. Assign LFO 1 to the filter cutoff, make sure it's in unidirectional mode, and we're going to set the LFO to retrig. The LFO shape, I'd recommend either a saw or a triangle. You want to be getting a wobble feeling and syncing it to 1/4, 1/8, or even a triplet, but just make sure you're syncing it to the project tempo because we're creating a rhythmical in time feeling. As well as adding this LFO to the filter cutoff, you could also add it to other parameters like the drive of the filter as well, because everything is going to be moving in the same time with this LFO. So it's all in the same rhythmical movement. Come to the Effects tab and we're going to activate distortion, multiband compression, and chorus. And if you wanted to further build on top of that movement, you could add your LFO to, say, the drive of the distortion and also the mix of the chorus. You could just keep adding it subtly, obviously not ridiculously, but adding it to parameters of your synth, because as long as it's the same LFO, it's all in the same rhythmical movement and it adds to that wobble feeling. You could enter into automation and automate the LFO rate so that you're switching the rate of wobble throughout the track. A tip here would be to experiment with LFO rates and also explore new grooves by switching up the shapes of your LFO. And And that is it. That's your 5 essential bass sounds that every producer needs to know if they want to start making D&B. If you'd like to get your hands on my free presets of the 5 sounds that we've gone over today, slightly refined so that they're ready for you to use in your projects, then they are linked below in the description. Grab your free presets now. Thank you so much for watching the video. My name is Becky Safe, and I will see you for another one. Bye!